Hey everyone, welcome to lesson 2 for our LOTR Converter app. In this lesson, we're going to be laying out the foundation of our app design using SwiftUI. I'm going to talk about ZStack, VStack, and HStack and show you how we use these different stacks to put your design elements wherever you want on the screen. We're going to be working side by side with our finished app design, and we're going to break down our screen design to the individual elements to see exactly what we need to do. Then we'll build the foundation of our design by laying out our stacks. Let's get started. First, make sure you have the LOTR Converter project open in Xcode. And if you closed out of Xcode after the last lesson, just open it up the same way we did last time, in the dock or in the Launchpad. And then when the welcome screen comes up, the recent projects will be over here. And you can click on LOTR Converter to open that up. So our project loads up, and we see that our app looks pretty much the same as it did when we first created it. In fact, the only thing we changed was we tested out a couple things here in our code to see how it would look in the preview, and we also brought in our app icon and our other images. Now back in the content view, we're going to start building our main screen. And let's just pull that up and look at it for a sec. So what do we see here? We see this prancing pony image and this currency exchange text. We have this main middle section here where we actually do our currency conversion. And then down here we have an info button. And all of that is on top of this background image that looks like a wooden tabletop or something. Something you might find in the prancing pony. So how do we even get started on a design like this? Well, SwiftUI actually makes it really easy. If we break it down, all we're really looking at here is a few ZStacks, VStacks, and HStacks all placed in a way where our design elements end up exactly where we want. Now before we start typing any code, let me explain what all those different kinds of stacks are. VStack means vertical stack. HStack means horizontal stack. And ZStack is when you stack things back to front. Now, ZStack can be a little bit confusing, so let me show you how it works. So here I have a phone from two angles. One is with the screen facing you, and one is laying on its back facing up. So the way a ZStack works is as you place design elements on the stack, they get placed on top of each other like this. So like I said, back to front. The first design element is all the way in the back, and the last design element is at the very front. So if we look at our finished app design and view it the same way, we can see that the first thing we place on our ZStack is this background image, and then the next thing we put on there is, well, everything else. But we can't just put everything else on there all at once. Really what we put on the ZStack after the background image is a VStack, and then we put everything else on that VStack. Remember, VStack stands for vertical stack. And this is how it works. The first design element goes on the stack, and then as we place more stuff on the VStack, the other stuff moves up to make room. And then an HStack is when we stack our views horizontally, like this. And again, it does the same thing. As we add more elements, the other ones move over to make room. If we break down our finished app design and find all the places where we stack our elements, either back to front or top to bottom or left to right, we'll be able to figure out how to lay out the stacks within our code. First, let's start by looking at the entire screen. And again, we know that what we need first is a ZStack. And the first thing we put on the ZStack, the thing we want in the very back, is our background image. And then in front of that, we need something that will hold everything else. Let's take a closer look and see how everything else is laid out. So first we have this prancing pony image, then this text, then this whole currency conversion section here, and then the info button. Those look like they're stacked from top to bottom, vertically. So we'll put all of that inside a VStack. Now we can see that in this currency conversion section here, there's a few different design elements. So let's zoom into this section and figure out how those are all laid out. I see three major parts. This left part, the equal sign, and this right part. That's our first H stack. These are all laid out horizontally. Now let's zoom in again and focus on just one of these sides. So we've got our currency up here, then our text field right underneath. That's another V stack. Now just one more time. If we zoom in and look at just this part here, we can see that we need to horizontally stack this image and this text. And that's it. That was a lot of zooming in to find those stacks, but now that we know where they are, we just have to type them in our code just like we have them here, and our app will be laid out just like this. So let's go back to our project and get started. So again, let's keep our finished app design in mind, and we remember that the first thing we need is a Z stack that will encompass our entire main screen. So to do that, let's just remove all of this stuff and type Z stack with curly braces. And then anything we want on the Z stack we'll place inside the curly braces. And remember, a Z stack goes from back to front. And the thing we want in the very back is the background image. But I don't want to start adding views or design elements yet until we have all of our stacks in place. I want to lay out the foundation before we actually start adding the individual views. So let's just leave a comment here so we can remember where our image goes when we're ready to put that in. Okay, good. So after our background image, the next thing on our Z stack is whatever's going to hold everything else. And remember, we already figured out that that is a V stack. So let's put a V stack here and make sure you always do your curly braces. Now what goes on our V stack? And again, we'll just type comments here so we can remember the views we need to put in here later. So first is our prancing pony image view. The next thing is our currency exchange text. Then our conversion section. And finally our info button. Now let's go back and take a look at that outline we had. So we said prancing pony image and currency exchange text, and then it looks like our conversion section needs to be inside an H stack. So we need to go back up to this conversion section and add more stacks. The first thing is we need to stack the three main parts to the conversion section horizontally. So we need an H stack. And inside here we have our left conversion section, our equal sign, and our right conversion section. And we already know that within our left conversion section we have another stack, a V stack. And the first thing on that V stack is our currency, and the next thing is our text field. And now finally we're on the last stack. We need one more H stack right here, and that will contain our currency image and our currency text. And that's almost it. We put everything in our left conversion section, but we need the same stacks in our right conversion section. So let's just copy this code all the way down to there, and then we can right click and click copy, and then we have some copy options there, which you would just do copy. Or a faster way is you can, again, make sure it's all highlighted, and then just hold the Command key on the keyboard and press the letter C. That stands for copy. So I just did that, and then we just paste it over here right under this comment. And again, we could do right click, paste, that would work. Or the keyboard shortcut is Command V. You might think it would be Command P for paste, but P is already used for something else, so we get to use Command V for paste. And then in this right conversion section, we just need to switch the image and text around since the text comes first in the section on the right. Alright, now that's really it. We are done laying out our stacks. So now, we take a look over here in the preview, and there's still nothing. And that's because stacks don't actually show anything until you start putting some views on there. Things like text and images and stuff. And we can even go to selectable mode and see what happens when we click on one of our stacks. And the answer is nothing. There's no blue line. And that's because these stacks aren't actually taking up any space yet. They'll only start taking up space when we start adding our design elements. Now, before we finish this lesson, I want to remind you of something we talked about in lesson 0, and that is viewception. Everything that we see on the screen is made up of views within views. So right here, look at the name, Content View. This, the content view, is a view. And what do we put in our view? More views. All these stacks are actually views. They're just a special kind of view that doesn't actually show anything until we put other views in there. But let's open up our inspector real quick and go to our attributes inspector and try clicking on some of these stacks. You see we have some view options over there, just like we saw with our image view and our text view from lesson 1. And if we go to the quick help inspector, we can see that VStack is a view that arranges its subviews. Remember, viewception arranges its subviews in a vertical line. And then it tells us about it and shows us a sample. And again, we can see more in the developer documentation. And same with an H-stack. Let's click here. Shows us a sample of an H-stack. And then a Z-stack. And we have our sample there. And a Z-stack is a view that overlays its subviews. Now, my point here is that everything we put on a view is just another view. And every view is reusable. See, we have multiple V-stacks. One right here, and one right here. And then even another one right here. We can use a V-stack view more than once. In fact, as many times as we want. We also use multiple H-stacks. Here, and here, and here. Now, that reusability is really nice. And we also get that in any views that we create. And I'll show you more about that as we go through the lessons. Let's go ahead and close out our inspector and put our preview back in live mode. And later, I'll talk more about how stacks and spacing works, but for now, we just wanted to first lay out the foundations of our app design before we started adding in all the details. Doing it this way, and even adding these comments where we want our views, can just help us keep our overall design in mind as we start adding each of the individual parts. And in the next lesson is actually where we'll finally start seeing this design come to life. In this lesson, we learned all about Z-stacks, V-stacks, and H-stacks, and how we can use them to lay out a custom design for our apps. Then we studied our final screen design and broke it down to its individual parts to identify exactly where we need to place our stacks to get the design that we want. After that, we put our expert stack knowledge into practice and laid out our stacks within the code. In the next lesson, we're finally going to start adding design elements that we can actually see. We'll learn how to add image, text, and button views, and we'll learn how to modify our views so that they look exactly how we want. So I'll see you in the next lesson.